What is going on, everyone? My name's Boit, and I'm back with something completely different. It's another tier list. I love tier lists. Tier lists are so much fun to make. This tier list is going to be my predictions for which gods are going to be the best in Champions League. So Champions League is just around the corner. We have just fired off the qualifiers round. Players are scheduling right this minute. So I'm going to look forward to over the next couple of weeks, and then after that's wrapped up, we will be jumping straight into the league. There's not really any difference in the rules between the qualifiers and the actual league, so you're actually going to be seeing a little bit of a taste of what's going to be coming with the next 3 weeks anyways. So first thing to note is that this tier list is effectively, we're going to be doing it in 2 ways. So the first way is we're going to be talking about main god. Because this tournament is a no god restriction tournament, it means that players are going to be able to play every single game with, I don't know, Loki, for example. They're just going to be able to do that if they like. So we're going to be talking about which god is going to be your best possible god to main. There is no restrictions on the god, so that also means you could pick a second god to play, or a third god to play in a series, or a fourth god or fifth god to play in a series. And we're going to be calling that your pocket god. So your main god and your pocket god. We'll get more in depth about what pocket means a little bit later. We're just going to be starting with the main god. Pretty simple to think about what it means. Effectively, it's going to be the god you want to pick most of the time. We're going to be starting with our worst gods to main in this tournament, and we're going to be making ourselves move upwards. Worst god, in my opinion, in the current meta to main with the current map pool and everything is going to be Isis. Isis is just simply not what she used to be. There's not really any reason to pick Isis over picking, say, Set or Ra, in my opinion. She's got a lot of really big, glaring weaknesses in her early game that can be exploited by nearly every single god on this list. She does have the potential to feel really strong, but that power only comes on certain maps, like, for example, Anatolia, which actually isn't in this tournament. So she might be able to pick a game or two off of someone in a series, but having this god being a main god, just too many weaknesses. Don't think it's going to be something. I don't think it's going to be something that we're going to be seeing a whole lot of in this tournament as a main. So we're going to pop her in C tier. In the B tier here, Isis by herself, in my opinion. In the B tier, the devilishly beautiful god that is Gaia. Gaia is strong. When I put her in B tier, you have to remember that I don't mean that any of these gods are necessarily, I do mean that they're weak, but I don't mean that they're weak in the sense that they are unplayable completely. I mean that as a main god, Gaia is maybe not your best bet. I think that she is strong, but you can't play her like Uranus. You can't play her like Kronos. And it takes a lot of experience to get good at defending all of the weaknesses or the attacks coming your way as a Gaia main. In recent tournaments, I kind of feel like a lot of Atlantean players have picked Gaia out of necessity rather than wanting to, not really having experience piloting her in a really good way. There's only really one good player who has put any significant hours into Gaia in this tournament, and that's Kavoth. And he's been saying recently that he doesn't really believe that Gaia is going to be a solid pick for him in this tournament. I highly doubt we're going to be seeing Gaia picked all too much here as main god because of all those reasons. Coming in slightly behind Gaia as a main god, it's going to be Kronos. Again, this isn't because Kronos is weak, but Kronos is not a god I'm going to be expecting to see anyone picking seriously more than, say, 1 or 2 games in a best of 5 series. the big thing about Kronos is that it's really, really difficult to differentiate Kronos versus Uranus on a land map. Obviously, on a water map, Kronos has got a lot of options with deconstruction, with hero oracles, with the speedy oracles. A lot of advantages to be found with Kronos, with time shift and things like that on water maps. But on a land map, there's not really any differences. So I see Kronos being not really being a god to be picked over Uranus. Uranus is going to be the champion here for Atlantean players, most likely. So I just don't expect to see Kronos being a serious god to be maining in this tournament. Next god on the list is going to be Thor. Where's Thor? Thor sitting down here in B tier next to the Cronus and Gaia. Now, for a very similar reason to Isis, this god just doesn't really make sense to be picked here. This god is more of a flex civ in this for this tournament. And what I mean by that is a god that a player will pick to say, I'm better than you. I'm picking this god to show that I'm better than you. Because Thor, just like Isis, there is no reason to pick Thor over picking Odin. There is no reason to pick Thor over picking Loki. Maybe for a water map over Loki, but Odin is going to be completely fine. So people will be picking Thor. If they do pick Thor, and Thor is a popular god, people will be picking Thor as I'm just better than you and there's nothing you can do about it kind of thing. So just to nail that point in, Odin is a god which is better than Thor in every single way on a land map. There is no reason to pick Thor over Odin. Maybe Thor is going to have a good matchup against everyone that Odin has a good matchup against, but Odin is just doing it in a better way. That's why Thor is sitting down here in B tier. My next pick is, I want to put this pick in with an asterisk. My next pick is Set in the B tier, sitting at the top of the B tier, mind you, but sitting in the B tier. The asterisk on Set is that players are just recently starting to understand that Set has got unique power that sets him apart, but too punny, that separates Set from the other Egyptian gods. And this is things that involve hunting Set animals out of your pharaoh. We've seen Chemo doing it recently. I've obviously been doing it for quite a while. I think that even Joe might be doing it. We've seen Yoshi doing it. If Set is played in a way that pushes Set's unique ability, unique bonuses, and plays Set in that way, I think that Set is going to be in the A tier. If Set is played how we've been seeing Set be played recently, which is not utilizing this very, very strong feature of Set, Set will be in the B tier. So I'll put an asterisk on Set. Interested to see if this is something that we're going to see in this tournament, or if it's going to be something that's going to start happening later down the track, say 6 months down the track, when people start actually taking advantage with Set. We'll have to wait and see. But as a main god, it just seems that B tier, unless you are really going for it. Next one, Zeus. This is going to be our the start of our A tier here. Now, Zeus here, Zeus is possibly the best god out of all of the gods to pick if you don't know what your opponent is playing. Does that mean that Zeus is the best main god? Not 100% sure. He has a chance to win every single matchup. Maybe he's got some poor matchups against some of the top the S tier civs, but he can win any single matchup at any time, given the right map, given the right strategy, given the right skill level. The problem is that he's simply not consistent enough to be sitting in that S tier column. He's just not good enough. Not consistent enough, I should say. There is one caveat here, that if there was a player to join Champions League who were to completely master Zeus, Zeus is a god that is going to get better and better with the skill level So if there is a player with a skill level high enough to pilot Zeus and make the right decisions all the time, wouldn't be surprised to see Zeus sitting on top of this, on top of Champions League as a main god. Someone picks Zeus and actually wins Champions League with Zeus as their main god. Wouldn't be surprised to see that in the slightest. Next god on this list is Poseidon. Poseidon is in a strange place right now, in my opinion. A very strange place. Poseidon's struggling against Hades, Odin, Uranus, Kronos, possibly even Gaia, yet being incredibly strong against Egyptian. There's also high-level player. In high-level play, Poseidon's kind of struggling against Norse as well, to some degree. Depending on if you're counting Matrius in that group of players who plays Poseidon, obviously you do, but I'd say that Matrius even dropping games against Norse is fairly regular occurrence of at least recently. It also seems that Poseidon is still a fairly good counter to Zeus. So there's like a couple of really strong picks for Poseidon, a couple of really weak picks for Poseidon, but in terms of maining Poseidon in this tournament, he's sitting in this A tier. He's going to be a decent pick here, especially if you want to play Poseidon. You could definitely find yourself having a lot of good games with Poseidon here. And we'll continue along and we'll start throwing in a surprise. This one is a surprise pick for me. Definitely a god that I thought was quite weak until relatively recently. Maybe like a year ago, I started changing my tune on this god. It's Loki. Loki is an incredibly strong god, just to say the very least. Recent build order innovation has kind of changed the way that we kind of look at Norse to some degree. A lot of Norse players are starting to get up faster, start getting more things out faster, starting to understand how to make decisions better. So, for example, like certain situations, how much food you've got, what strategy or what build order you can do to optimize and get the most stuff out for Norse early is really starting to see Norse have a lot more success recently. And I think that coupled with some top players playing Loki in a less one-dimensional way is really starting to show that Loki can compete amongst the other top gods. So right now, Loki feels like he's actually a really strong pick against, say, Hades, Odin, Uranus. So there's a lot of potential here for Loki to actually be a pocket pick to kind of cover up some weaknesses of maybe a different main god. But I do feel like the main player picking Loki as their main god in this tournament, prioritizing picking Loki over other gods, they're going to do really, really well. And I think that you're going to have to see people, especially people not picking the Norse gods or picking specific gods, possibly having to cover their cover a Loki weakness with a pocket pick. And again, we'll talk more about that after this main god tier list is done. But yeah, I think that the other thing here is that potentially, with just a little bit more innovation on the Loki side of things, he might actually even find himself getting bumped up into that S tier. Say things like being able to deal with like set a little bit easier, maybe being able to deal with water maps a little bit better. All those things could potentially see Loki getting pushed up into that S tier without even another balance change. Next god on this list. This one will surprise just a little bit, but it's Ra. Not an S tier god anymore, in my opinion, as much as you guys are going to be spitting out your drink saying, what do you want about, Boit? There's no way that how can Ra not be an S tier god anymore? Basically, Ra has steadily been falling out of favor amongst the top players. There's really not that many people playing Egyptian anymore amongst the top players. Why? Is this because Egyptian is weak or because there's just not popular to play anymore? I think that if Egyptian was strong, people will be playing Egyptian more. This is just how it seems to work. There's only really two players of note who are playing Ra at the top level at the moment, and that's Chemo and that's Joe. So seeing Ra in the Champions League, seeing Ra do have success, even winning the Champions League. Definitely a possibility with Chemo playing Ra, with Joe playing Ra. But the thing is that, honestly, Ra struggles against Hades, Ra struggles against Odin, and Ra struggles against Uranus of late. And yes, I said Odin there. You just have to go watch a couple of games recently that have been played, Odin versus Ra matchups recently. Ra is having troubles in that matchup. That might change during Champions League. Ra might get a little bit of innovation to kind of deal with that Odin matchup, and Odin players are going to have to adjust and see if they can figure it out. The other thing is that Ra is also finding issues with Poseidon and Kronos. So there's a lot of weaknesses here in Ra's against Ra or for Ra. There's a lot of weaknesses for Ra to have to deal with. So we'll have to wait and see. If Ra gets a nice map and take the game to late game, he's going to see less losses coming. But I think that it's going to be a really, really tough time for Ra to have a whole bunch of success over these next three gods that are coming up. Next god on the list, Uranus. We're getting there. We're getting to the end of it. This one might be a surprise, might not be a surprise, but Uranus will forever be a powerhouse in our age mythology. There is no easy way to make, I don't know how to put these words out. There's no easy way for Uranus to be not a strong god in AOM. The unique bonus of having 10% fast move speed and having the Atlantean economy to boost him into winning positions is something that is just not really fixable without just completely reworking those unique aspects of Uranus. That being said, I haven't put him at the top of the list. He's kind of third on the list. So that's the thing. But Uranus doesn't really have any weaknesses. But there are the two gods remaining on this list, Odin and Hades, who definitely give Uranus a tough time. There's also the pocket pick of Set, which is a difficult time for Uranus to deal with. So Uranus isn't going to be getting away scot-free here and having an easy ride just maining Uranus in this tournament. You're going to have some stuff to kind of help you out along the way. There is a potential even that Uranus could get knocked down to A tier. Say, if Loki players have a lot of success against Uranus, if Zeus players have a lot of success against Uranus, if Set players actually do find their wins there, then, I mean, if you start adding in all these gods that are starting to get wins against Uranus quite consistently, then is Uranus an S tier? Well, at the moment, I'm going to leave him here because I don't think that's going to happen. But we'll have to wait and see after the tournament as to what the win rates end up being. Second on the list this should be coming as no surprise here. Odin sitting at S tier here. I think Odin is an absolute powerhouse right now and is kind of the only god I can think of that has any potential of countering Hades. I'm going to put that in brackets, countering Hades. Or Odin doesn't necessarily counter Hades. If Odin gets a good map, Odin can beat Hades. That is kind of it. At the very least, it'll end up being a skill matchup. So Odin has a few tough matchups from the Egyptian side of things, like Set, quite difficult to deal with. Even maybe Isis is going to be one of the tough gods for Odin players to deal with. But in the end, I think that Odin is basically a pretty safe main god here to be going for, and one of the better ones to be going for, especially for the skilled Norse players out there. That's kind of it. I don't really have much more to say. There's not really a good pick against Odin outside of the Set and Isis things here. Maybe Kronos could be a bit scary for Odin, but yeah, Odin doesn't have a lot of weaknesses right now, and that's why he's sitting kind of at the top of S tier. And then finally we get Hades sitting up here. I believe Hades is right now the best overall god. I don't think there is a solid counterpick with the exception of Odin and potentially Uranus, but I think at the very best, it's a skill matchup in both of those situations. And when it comes down to it, Hades is going to be a god that is going to sit there, not lose, and find wins. And that is something that players like Nullus and Chemo have been, well, Chemo definitely, but Nullus as well to some degree recently have been able to show is that if you don't lose, you win. And you want to pick the god that allows you to win by not losing the best. And that at the moment is Hades. I'm going to see a lot of players playing Hades in this tournament is my prediction. Now, to talk about the other sides of things I was talking about earlier, pocket picks. So what is a pocket pick? A pocket pick is a god which covers the weaknesses of your main god the best. So we're going to be resetting this tier list and hopefully doing this a little bit faster. Okay, we'll just put it all into the C tier here for now. So effectively, you want your pocket pick to be covering as many weaknesses as you possibly can, so you don't have to practice that many different gods. So for example, if you were to pick Odin as your main god, your weaknesses might be your weaknesses might be Set, Isis. Maybe you'd have some trouble against, say, a Kronos. So you want to find a god that is going to be able to cover those weaknesses really well. But that being said, we need to be putting gods into this list here that are going to be able to cover as many weaknesses as possible. So we're going to be doing this a little bit faster now because this video is already really long. So we've got in the S tier, we've got Uranus, we've got Zeus, we've got Set, and we've got Kronos. These gods are going to be your S tier pocket picks. Now, Kronos is maybe a bit of a surprise pick here. This is a beautiful pocket pick here for the water maps. This god, probably not one of those gods you really need to have for anything other than that sort of situation. So Uranus is a clear first pick for the pocket pick. He doesn't really have a weak matchup, and he is he's quite easy to learn. So you don't have to put a lot of effort into having him as a pocket pick. Zeus is very similar to Uranus, and that doesn't really have an unwinnable matchup, but he does have quite a bit of experience needed to get good at him. And while I'm putting him in this S tier or S plus tier, this is probably more of an S tier. There's not really an S plus god here for this. Zeus is going to be one of those ones that players will have had to have played quite a bit of, and that god might even be close to the main. So if your main god is like kind of sitting here, the Zeus probably needs to be sitting here to be a reliable pocket pick. Then Set here is going to be your kind of Norse killer to some degree, also being able to be an Atlantean killer as well. So you cover both the Norse and the Atlantean weaknesses in Set if you can play Set really well. Again, Set needs a lot of experience to be able to win those games, and Set also struggles very mightily against the Greeks right now. So you're gonna have to be picking a god. If you're going to be using Set, you'd be wanting to pick a god which deals with the Greeks really well as your main. So it kind of makes things difficult. Anyways, onwards and upwards. We got the A tier. Now, boom. I'll just pop these guys down here because this makes no sense having S and S, whatever. So Isis popping in here into the kind of top echelon of the pocket picks is mostly why Isis was weak as a main god is because there's just so many weaknesses you have to cover. But in tournament format, when you know the map and you know the matchup, Isis can be a very, very strong god to be picking as a pocket pick. Maybe instead of picking Set for the said matchup. Now, I believe Set's better, but Isis is a little bit simpler to play. So that's why she's going to be popping up here. So she's going to be able to take some games, say, on maps like Calm Shores or some of those water maps, kind of similar to Kronos, in that can be a pretty good water map pick. And also there are some other maps which Isis is going to have some success on. Say, for example, Gold Rush, you might see Isis having some success there. Then we have Gaia here in the A tier. I think that Gaia is really, really good against Greek. I think Gaia is really, really good against Ra. And I think Gaia also can be good against Uranus. This is one of those ones where I'm like, maybe Gaia sits here in this pocket pick thing for a player like Kavoth, where he's going to be playing Uranus, but if he plays against an Uranus player, maybe it's better for him to pick Gaia. If he plays against a Greek player, maybe it's better for him to pick Gaia. And if he gets the right map, maybe it's better to pick Gaia. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Gaia popping out for Kavoth in this tournament against certain gods. Probably not many other people will pick her, but I think she'll have a pretty healthy win rate in Champions League. Then we have Odin here. Odin and Loki are the other big gods in the A tier. Odin for a pocket pick. This is just because of their usefulness against the Greeks and even against the Atlanteans. So they're kind of similar to Set, but they do take a lot more skill, in my opinion, to get those wins against Greek and against Atlantean than Set does against Norse and Atlantean. So that's why these are separated the way that they are. Now we got in the C tier, we've got Hades and Poseidon. These gods here doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be pocket picking these gods because they're main gods. If you were good enough to pick Hades in a tournament, you'd probably just be maining Hades in a tournament, is my opinion on the matter. That's why I'm putting him down the B tier, because it just doesn't make sense. So if you're not good enough to main them, you'll be losing if you pick them as a pocket pick, most likely. And then you got in the C tier, Ra and Thor. I don't see any reason to pick Thor over over Odin or Loki. I just don't see it. Doesn't make any sense. Odin and Loki can be much better pocket picks than Thor. There's the only situation I would expect to see Thor picked seriously in this tournament, not just a flex pick, or someone who's flexing, is if you have Thor if you're versing a Norse player and you're a Norse player yourself. If you can't go off Civ, and you want to get an advantage in the Norse war, wouldn't be surprised to see Thor getting picked in that, because Thor, in my opinion, is the god to pick in the Norse war. And we saw that in Fimbulwinter with Shadowfax. There's going to be other Norse players who disagree with me, but Shadowfax, the best player, believes that Thor is the best in the Norse mirror. And he's proved that quite a few times. And then Ra sitting down here in the C tier. I don't think there's really a matchup. You're going to be pocket picking Ra in. I think that the Ra mains will play Ra. Probably won't see Ra getting pocket picked very often. There's just no reason to pick him as a pocket pick over, say, picking Set or Isis. That's the video. It's a long one. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And I'll see you guys soon. Enjoy life. Bye.